For those of you new to Unreal Online Learning, you can gain access to it by going to unrealengine.com, Learning and Support, and Online Learning. Here you will find free Unreal Engine video tutorials as well as full guided learning paths for all different things inside of Unreal Engine as well as Twinmotion and the Quixel ecosystem. If we take a look at the content library, here you'll see that we have it broken down into categories including games, architecture, automotive transportation, broadcast live events, film, television, as well as the foundations for the engine. These are really high quality courses that take you through everything including blueprints, materials, full Kickstarters for animation, really focused courses on doing visualization for architectural spaces, introduction to global illumination, real-time rendering fundamentals, post-processing, building better pipelines. There's some really detailed material in here for sequencer, full in-depth courses into the rendering and how Unreal Engine renders, sequencer training for cinematic shot production. This is amazing content. It's broken down into learning paths, collections. You can favorite things. It's broken down into different languages, including Japanese and Korean and Chinese. You can actually search the entire library, and once you complete a course, let's take a look at one of the ones that I created. You'll see that they're broken down into different videos that have full assessments, and once you get through the whole thing, you will actually gain a badge that will be tracked as achievements, micro-credentials. And if we go and take a look at your actual profile in here, these things will start to stack up. You can see that I actually need to do a few more, but as you complete them, you can actually share them on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and kind of show your progress as you're learning Unreal Engine and Twinmotion and all the other things. So be sure to come in here and check this out. This is an amazing learning resource. Once again, 100% for free, a great learning resource for instructors to assign to students that are learning Unreal Engine, and a good flipped learning model as well. As we come to the end of another academic term, it's time to start collecting your best student projects for the next Student Sizzle Reel. If you go to unrealengine.com and search for a blog called Tips for Submitting Your Unreal Engine Projects for the Annual Student Sizzle Reel, you'll find some advice that can be very helpful. Things like making sure to record at the highest resolution and stable frame rate, and also things like making sure that you don't use default textures and characters and assets, and making sure that you submit only one project at a time. Once you're ready, make sure you submit the project to YouTube or Vimeo and then send us the link to student.reel@unrealengine.com. Make sure in the description of the video that you submit the project name, your name, team members, team name, and then the school name. We are looking forward to the submission. The reel is one of the best things we do every year. We're very excited about it. Please make sure you collect the work and send it to us. And we're looking forward to all the submissions from around the world. Thanks much. Hello and welcome to another Educator's epic Unreal Engine live stream. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the stream. As usual, we've got Tom Shannon, Mark Flanagan, and this time we are really happy to have Galen Davis from the Quixel team. And we are live today on our stream at 2 o'clock on Friday here on Eastern Time. Hope you are all having a good day. It's a nice day here in North Carolina, a little sunshine, not so much rain like we had yesterday. We've got an exciting show today for you. Galen is here from the Quixel team to share some amazing things. Today's stream is titled What Educators Need to Know About the Quixel Ecosystem, and I don't even know if that's exactly the name of it. What is it really called, Tom? Forget what it's called.
Why do you think I would have that information at my fingertips? Quixel Bridge Mixer and Mega Scans for Education is what it says here.
That's right. And I think this is a really important stream because we've had some really good streams with Galen and some of with Teddy, who's the founder of Quixel. And in the last couple of streams and webinars that we've had, we've talked a lot about Quixel and Megascans and Bridge and some of the amazing tools and the relationship with Quixel and Epic. But as we are doing now on Fridays, we're focusing really on the education community and, what this means to instructors, what it means to students, what it means to academic institutions. So the opportunity to have Galen with us today. And for those of you who don't know Galen, he'll introduce himself here in a minute, but he's the head of evangelism, as far as I think it's still your title, but he focuses on making sure that the world knows about these amazing tools and the workflows in this amazing ecosystem. But this is really a unique opportunity for us to talk about what this means in an educational setting, because recently everything really has changed as the relationship matured between Epic and Quixel and these amazing tools. And we wanted to make sure that we're very clear about what it means for instructors, what it means for people that are teaching Unreal Engine, what people are teaching game design, game development, but not only that, but also filmmaking, people that are teaching architecture, people that are teaching design in general, what it means to have all of a sudden this amazing, incredible suite of content available to them that easily moves inside of Unreal Engine at their disposal. And so without further ado, let me introduce you to Galen. We're going to talk a little bit here at the beginning. And then so over the course of the stream, we're going to jump into Mixer, we're going to jump into Bridge, we're going to look at the whole library and really talk about the workflows, what it means in an academic environment, what it means working in a school, what it means, just accessing this and how easy it can be to work with this amazing stuff. And just try and answer your questions about it in general, because we've talked about it as a whole, but, really to focus on it and what it means working with it as a student, as an instructor, maybe even someone supporting other people in the studio can be really valuable. Let me toss it over to you, Galen, and let you talk a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the stream today, guys. I'm super excited to be here. And, I have a huge heart for education. I think we should just start there. So I've worked in the games industry for 9 years now. And the thing that I keep coming back to is that I went to college and I had an experience there, some amazing instructors, met some amazing people, but I always felt like education was something that I wanted to dip my toe back in, regardless of if I was going to be working as an artist in the games industry. I wanted to be tangentially connected to it, and so this evangelism role is obviously perfect for that. And so I'm able to connect with educators and still work, closely with creators and make sure that I'm able to still kind of get that message across and better the solutions for everyone. So I've worked in the games industry, like I said, for about 9 years. So I've worked on games like BioShock, Borderlands, Evolve, some Star Wars games, and then the most recent God of War. So it says we're getting some feedback here. What should I do here, guys? Should be...
It's on Lewis's end.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, I think
cool.
There's a loop back happening.
We'll keep going, I guess, and then Lewis will probably work on the background here.
We can still understand what you're saying. So.
Yeah, keep going.
Cool. Sweet. Well, I think maybe where we should start then is we should roll the reel real quick, just so that'll kind of set the table for everyone, maybe give a little bit of context and everything. And then we'll just kind of dive right into some of the points that we wanted to cover today. So, Lewis, do you have that video queued up?
I do.
Cool. Do we have audio, by the way? Or?
Here it comes.
Cool. Awesome. Well, cool. So we're going to be covering a lot of the stuff that's in that trailer today. And like Lewis said at the top of the show, we're going to be looking at everything, obviously, through the lens of educators and students as well. So I think that the first thing that we should talk about is that, like Lewis was saying, is that everything has changed. Everything has changed for us at Quixel. So if you haven't heard the news, obviously, so Quixel was acquired by Epic Games at the end of last year, and so the big thing that means for users of Unreal Engine is that the entire Megascans ecosystem is free to use. So especially if you're a student or an educator here in the live stream today, we should just completely underscore this so that you guys understand that for all of your students, they can go home, they can download everything that we're going to be showing today. They have full, complete access to the library. And it's just really exciting because it's going to be a new era of creation for students and educators. So I wanted to point you guys to a couple of resources here to start. Lewis, is there anything else you want to add to the acquisition and the merge, I guess? Yeah.
Yep. Nope, I can't.
Turn on my mic and hopefully that's not going to feedback. One of the things that we talk to with folks is that when you go to an academic institution, is that what does it mean to have an Epic ID, and how do you log into the Quixel ecosystem with an Epic ID? Do you have to go and get the content from the marketplace? Can you use an Epic ID to log into the Quixel Megascan site, to bridge and to mixer? And is that, the right way to get it into the engine? I think if we can sort of workshop through bringing content into the engine that way, and, is the Epic ID, the same one that you log into the Epic Games launcher and Unreal Engine, the right way to get all this content if you're a student, if you're just brand new starting into the engine, if you're an instructor, and if you're an administrator in an academic institution? Is that the pathway to access to all the content?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll cover that today. And I want to show pretty much the best and the easiest way to get content into the engine, because this is one of the things that's super important for students and educators, is making sure that, and all the way up to developers, at AAA studios or film companies, right, is that we want to remove as many of the roadblocks as we possibly can for artists to actually be working inside the engine. And if they're bogged down by importing LODs and setting up shaders and doing all that type of work, then it's gonna take away from the time they could spend just being creative. And so we'll definitely go over that today, just how easy it is to bring content into the engine. And then we'll also talk about some of the future plans, obviously, of what we're doing at Quixel in conjunction with Epic, and just kind of set the table for everything that's going to be coming out for the next year plus. So, and like Lewis said too, we did do a webinar recently, and there's a little bit of a deep dive into some of those topics. So I would watch that in conjunction with this afterwards, if you guys are interested in some of the past, present, and future plans as well. So I guess we could start with sort of what Quixel is, I guess, and then we can sort of move through some of these other points here. So I guess where we should maybe start is just the general idea and the principle behind what the company is, and sort of the general vision. So you guys might have heard of Quixel before, several years ago. In fact, I think the company is about 7 or 8 years old now. And so originally, Teddy and Wakar, who are our co-founders of the company, they had this vision of this amazing library of assets. Kind of the digital prop house is the best way that I like to think about it. If you think about the ways that creators go and they actually go to make movies, right, in Hollywood, is that there are these massive warehouses that are just lined, filled with props that you can fill your movie sets with. And basically their idea was that, why isn't there a digital version of this, right? And so ultimately what they wanted to do was basically take that idea and use photogrammetry and this new capture method of creating assets and content, and sort of have that be the driving force behind it. And so what's really neat about that is that, so they had very humble beginnings, obviously, as any entrepreneur has. And so they had to make tools at the beginning to keep the lights on. And so if you guys are familiar with Quixel Suite, Dedo, Indo, and some of these different tools that were sort of at the beginning of the life cycle of the company, those are really the tools that made it possible for the Megascans library and everything that they were looking to build today. So if you're an original user of those tools, shout out to you guys, because I was one of those people, and it was a really exciting time in the industry to be making content and to be an artist. So, but again, all of that sort of leads to what we're going to be talking about today, which is the library itself. And so, as you saw in that trailer, the library is basically comprised of several different parts, right? So the content is obviously first and foremost in that the offering is in the upwards now of over 12,000 assets that students and educators and professionals can download at any time with Quixel Bridge. The library is just fully accessible. There's no paywall in order to actually browse the content, so you can see anything that you want in there. And we'll actually go over that tool here as well. In fact, Lewis, should we maybe switch over to share screen here now? Okay, cool. So let me do this real quick. Share the screen. Okay. All right. And can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Well, so this is Quixel Bridge, and we're going to do a demo in this here, as well as Mixer, which is the other pillar that we're going to be talking about today, for mixing assets and creating new content here as well. So I guess we could just kind of generally start with maybe browsing this interface. And if you haven't ever seen the library, this is a good place to start here. So Bridge is the easiest way, in my opinion, obviously, to bring content in to Unreal Engine. And we do support other DCCs, renderers, and applications. So it's important to note that while we're going to be featuring Unreal Engine here specifically today, that you can actually kick this content into other applications as well. So this is what the library looks like here today. And so if I want, I can go and I can browse maybe some new 3D models and maybe see what are some of the new elements that have come online in the library recently. So I can go in here, I can see some of these awesome branches from a beach scan trip. We have these ammo crates that are coming online. Looks like they scanned some starfishes recently, some boxes, and all types of things, right? So what's neat about the library is that it's not limited to one specific industry, right? So while it might seem in a current push, right, like maybe with what we're looking at with just recent uploads, you might say, well, this is maybe just something that would fit more in like an ArchViz setting, or maybe it fits more in a game setting. But the fact is that we're constantly catering to all these different markets. And so you're going to see a wide variety of different content types that are actually going to go into the library, even just throughout the life cycle of the library throughout a week. So I'd encourage you guys to go and just sort of browse the library and sort of see what's new. This is, I mean, this might sound super nerdy, but this is like how I start most of my work days. I'm like, oh, I want to see like what the teams have been working on, and also look and see like what is trending, right? Like see the types of content that people are really gravitating towards. So I can see the trending assets here, and then everything that's latest here below for surfaces. So the library is not just 3D assets, not just surfaces though. We actually have a wide variety of different assets types here, as you can see here on the left. So we actually have a huge amount of vegetation, and we have some of the most talented vegetation artists in the entire industry making these types of content pieces for us. And so the thing that's important to note with all of this as well is that it's entirely renderer agnostic, right? And it's entirely optimized for whatever it is that you're working inside. So whether you're making a game that's AAA quality, right? That you can pull some really high resolution meshes, or if you're going to be developing a film like The Lion King, right? And maybe taking the most cinematic high resolution version of those assets in the 5 to 7 million range, you can get those as well, all the way down to an AR VR game as well. So everything you're seeing here can work for a wide variety of different content examples or projects that you might be working inside. So, and then another thing I would love to show you guys here is actually our collections tab. So this is a really cool way for us to be able to engage with our community here as well, in that we're now curating asset types and collections based on what our community is actually using and making. So as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different collections here, and a lot of these are literally from our community. And so we're always creating amazing content here just to sort of promote it as well. So a lot of these pieces that you're seeing here are done from done by some of our internal artists, but there are some that we dip into the community. We're able to feature them in a really prominent way, which is really exciting. So I can go in here and maybe I want to see everything that's in the Roman Empire collection, and I can see I have 3D assets, I've got atlases, frescoes, paintings, everything like that. There's just some really amazing stuff in here. Is there anything else you guys would like to see here inside of Bridge while I'm kind of browsing around, guys?
So we had a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that these assets, you can use it in, any art package. For students and educators, what is the licensing of that? If they get the free Unreal license, can they use it in Unity or not Unity, V-Ray or whatever? Um, is that restricted? Do they have to sign up for a separate license, or is that just covered?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So yeah, so everything today that we're going to be covering is obviously for Unreal Engine users. And if you're making something that's going to be Final Pixel in Unreal Engine, you can use all this stuff entirely for free. That's a really important point to make. Now, we also just revitalized our educational offering here on the site. So if you just go Quixel Education, you can just Google that. You'll be able to see this page here, and this will allow your institution to actually enroll in the education program. So this is if you're maybe not using Unreal Engine, but what it is basically, you get the entire suite of tools here. So the Megascans ecosystem, Bridge, Mixer, and a small sampling of the library. It's actually a smaller offering. But what it is that you can actually use the scans here that we actually curate for this specific license type, and this will allow you just to be able to go in and make, if you're creating something in V-Ray or in Unity or what have you, then you can use that here. So yeah, I would definitely encourage, if you're an educator that maybe hasn't taken the plunge yet in Unreal Engine, you can start here. And I think that what we're really excited about is, to have people maybe dip their toe in the water here and see like, oh wow, this stuff is pretty amazing. I'm given, about 300 or 400 assets to play with. What if I had the entire, 12,000 plus sampling of the library to play with? So yeah, I guess, does that answer the question, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. Cool.
But then also here on the actual site, the Quixel site, you'll be able to use your Epic ID to log in. Is that correct?
So when you actually download Bridge, that's when you sign in with your Epic ID. So from there, that's going to basically take the cuffs off, and you can just go in there and download whatever you want. So you'll actually be given a prompt when you download Bridge to either sign in with your account email or your Epic ID. So obviously, with your Epic ID, that's the optimal way to be working.
Right. And so for, those of you who are not familiar or who haven't done this yet, or whatever case, if you haven't done it, you just go to unrealengine.com and you can just go and get an Epic ID and register. And that's the same Epic ID that you would use to play Fortnite or to download Unreal Engine or Twinmotion or anything like that. So there's no real extra steps. It's a very simple process. It's also not something that we use at Epic to litter you with emails or anything like that. It's something that it opens up the Epic ecosystem. It opens up the Epic world to everyone, and Epic releases tons and tons of free stuff. So the Quixel tool suite and the Quixel ecosystem is part of all of that.
And speaking of more free stuff, why don't we tab over here actually to our YouTube channel. So if you just go to our Quixel YouTube channel here, we actually are creating a ton of amazing content here on this channel. We try to be pretty regular with uploads here as well. And you'll get a wide variety of different content on this site here, actually. So if I just go to my videos, the videos here on the Quixel YouTube, I can see a wide variety of different content here. So we just did a live stream with Victor actually about smart materials, and we're going to cover a little bit of smart materials today, actually. But we have full walkthroughs of these tools, right? Like if you need a completely like hour-long dedicated walkthrough of Mixer or Bridge or what have you, we have all of that here. And we've been doing live streams as well on our own YouTube channel. And so this is a great way for us to engage with our community live as well. So we'll be doing a few more of those here. But I wanted to actually give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the training that we're going to be doing here in the next couple of weeks. So I'll just sort of talk over it here in the background, but I'll highlight two specific scenes that we'll actually be doing full walkthroughs of. And this is really important for students and educators because the way that we want to be creating content is such to where you might see a scene like this and you think, wow, this is just incredibly detailed. Where do I even start? And so what we're doing is we're actually creating a lot of content that is basically walking everyone through the whole process here. So the two scenes I'm going to show you here today are actually completely original concepts as well. So our guys basically started from the concept phase, and they're not concept artists. They'll tell you, they'll be the first ones to tell you they're not concept artists, but they wanted to generally get a point across. And so they show us these concepts, and this will give us an idea about the types of scenes that they're looking to make. And then from there, we just let them create. We give them feedback along the way, obviously, but the way that we're kind of creating these tutorials is such to where we want to demystify all elements of environment creation here. And so while you might look at this and be very intimidated right to start, we break it all down, right? We break it down from the very beginning of the concept phase to browsing assets and collecting a huge amount of assets to actually create these pieces actually inside of Unreal Engine, go over prototyping and all the different things that you would actually need in order to create something like this. And the content type ranges, obviously, right? Like, so we'll have some that are a little bit more beginner focused, and then we'll have some that actually dip more into the intermediate and advanced level as well. So we definitely want to be catering to a wide variety of different creators. But this is a really, really important resource. So definitely I would encourage every educator and all the students to go give us a follow over there on YouTube, because we're going to be making a lot more of this type of content in the coming months and years. So definitely stay tuned for everything there. Cool. And that is that.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. It did all right, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think, I guess, let's see here. Is there anything else you guys want to cover here before we start going in and doing the demo?
Let's see.
I would say absolutely not. If you look at just the list, it's a massive list of creators in the industry that are using Megascans, and I mean it is a standard. It is absolutely an industry standard. And to me, having worked in the industry as an artist for a long time, it's super important to not reinvent the wheel every single time you start a project, right? Like as an environment artist, I don't know how many times I made a brick wall. Like, why wouldn't I, use scans as a jumping off point, right? I think that's the point that I drive home the most when this question is generally asked, is that a lot of artists, like they might need to just download something and throw it directly into their scene. And that's fine, right? That's how the product is created. You can do whatever you want with the content. But what's really exciting is that we offer a suite of tools here with the Megascans ecosystem that will allow you to remix those assets, and you can create variations of them and This is actually one of the things that we're going to be covering in one of our upcoming tutorials, is actually taking Megascans content and repurposing it for exactly what it is that you need, right? You might find things in the library that you're like, oh, that's really, really close to what I need. But if I just could modify it slightly in order to suit the project that I'm working on, I mean, that's ideal, right? And so I would just encourage everyone to maybe look at the library and to think not just, oh, I need, X, Y, and Z for the scene that I'm making, but why don't I go in, maybe add in my own personal character to the assets that I'm downloading and create something that's just entirely brand new. And frankly, that's how most people are using the library, right? While a lot of people might say, hey, yeah, I need this brick wall now, immediately throw it into the scene and done. A lot of artists maybe want to kind of take it and put their own personal spin on it. And that's a really exciting place to be. And the library just allows you to do that. It gives you that creative liberty.
That's
Yeah,
a
and
great
if I may
answer.
add too, with the complexity of materials and with the demands of photorealism, especially as games go into 4 and 8K displays, um, as a student or a small studio or even a large studio trying to achieve that level of quality on your own, will require a huge amount of effort that, it used to be that you just kind of, went with the digital camera and pointed it down at the ground and I've got concrete textures. That just doesn't really cut it anymore. So to really be at the cutting edge level, or even, I guess this is now the state of the art, um, you really got to lean on, and this is like you were saying, what the professionals do. So
Yep.
they're not going out with, a whole scanning crew. They're leaning on Quixel and their scanning crew to do the work.
So it
And
sounds
then,
like
And
yeah, making it their own. But just getting that base asset is so time consuming and technically rigorous to get it to this level of quality that, I mean,
As Lewis asked there, is this cheating? Well, the question's been asked of me several times, and my answer is, well, if you're talking about making art, what art are you making? If you're making a video game, if you're making a movie, then the final product is the movie or the video game, not necessarily the rock or the tree that you're making for it. And you want to make the best possible movie or video game. So being able to do that and iterate with tools like Quixel, of course, it's not cheating. You're actually making that final product better.
no, and I totally agree. And I think just to add to that, I mean, I think it's important, obviously, to be honest, right? Like when you're saying what it is that you did on your ArtStation post, yeah, it's important to say that, yeah, like I downloaded, these assets from Megascans, right? And these are the assets that I made custom, right? And that just to really speak to students in this regard too, it's also important to really understand who it is that you're trying to get a job with, right? Like if you're looking to get a job at Blizzard, on maybe like the World of Warcraft team, right? Like maybe it's not in your best interest to download super high resolution photorealistic assets without making any modifications to them, right? But if you're looking to maybe apply for more of like a world builder type environment role or something like that, that is less modeling, less hand painting textures or what have you, then maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, it's just important to just be honest about what it is that you're doing. And I mean, you can create some really amazing things. And I think what's really kind of been I don't know, obvious to me is just like the way that environment art roles are changing rapidly in the industry as well. I think that, when I started in the industry, things were just in a little bit of a different place. And so I think it's just a matter of sort of adapting and finding the best way to convey what it is that you're trying to convey with your art.
it sounds like a good answer is that it's an important workflow tool, and it's going to become even a more important workflow tool in the future as film companies and architecture companies and everyone really understands the value of this content and how important it's becoming. And students need to learn it. They just need to learn how to cite sources, as in everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, outsourcing is incredibly expensive, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So we think that we're kind of filling a gap there as well, right? And so this is a good transition actually into showing, I'll just roll sort of a quick trailer just so you guys can see the way that we're actually going about and capturing this content, right? So this is a scan trip that we went to in Japan. And we shot this little trailer just to highlight some of the areas that we were able to go to for this specific scan trip. So, the way that we actually go and get this data is it takes months and months of planning. I'll start there. It takes months and months of planning. We have dedicated teams that just spend all their time gathering permits, researching locations, finding out what the different communities are needing, right? So that's another really important aspect of the way that we curate the library, is that we're always listening to everything that the development community actually wants. So, we're speaking with all the big developers, all the major film companies and everything. We're filling the library with things that we believe are useful based on that feedback. And so I just show you that trailer just to show that, like, not only are we gathering rather exotic content, right, but we're scanning on so many different continents at any time that, the diversity of data and the diversity of just everything you're going to get in the library is something that's pretty unique. So, okay, I think
I had one more question before you roll into some workflow.
sure.
I wanted to ask you, as we're looking at all this content that is on the website, do I have to download all this stuff? I mean, can I download it all? I mean, I've got a pretty big hard drive. It looks amazing, and I kind of want it all. Is it a good idea? Is that I know when I was a student, I would download everything I could get my hands on. Should I be downloading this all? If I'm an instructor, do I want to download it all and put it on, a school server? What's the best way to sort of approach something like that?
Well, I would say it's important to note that everything in the library, like I mentioned, is something that you can work on across a wide variety of different SKUs, right? So if you're making, a blockbuster film, or if you're making an AR/VR title, right, the amount of the size of the data for each of those different SKUs is wildly different. So if you're going to download everything, like you said, like download literally everything, I think that each asset would probably weigh in, in several gigs, right? So I would encourage you guys to download only the things that you need, and then from there sort of build up your own library, right, of Megascan's assets. And so I think the other thing to note is that, once we get to the point where our targets are set as far as content, you won't be able to keep up with the amount of content that we're uploading to the library. It's a pretty aggressive target, and so we're looking to hit that.
One other thing about that is that so I can download the stuff. Oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. I'll think about it later. I'll
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I would say definitely just download what you need to. You don't feel like you need to download everything. It'll still be there next week. It'll still be there a month from now. It'll always be there.
Oh, I just thought about it. So I also noticed that there are lots of Megascan packs on the marketplace. So can you talk a little bit about what the difference is between the stuff on the marketplace and the stuff that you can get directly from the site? And is there advantage to one or the other?
Well, so the marketplace packs are basically just if you want to have something that's ready-made just to throw directly into your Unreal project with a full collection, right? You can do that exact same thing inside of Bridge, but you're downloading everything here and then exporting it, right? So the difference there being, if you download something from the marketplace, obviously I can have that locally, like just on my machine, and then I can just directly migrate that into my project. So it's just a little bit of a preference thing. So with Bridge, what's really cool here, so I can just show it real quick, right? So if I go to any of these collections, right, if I want to say tropical, right, I can actually download everything in the tropical pack, and I can export all of that into the Unreal Engine with a single click. So it's really just a personal preference thing. In here, right, you're given a huge amount of customization options for channel packing, choosing the resolution you want, choose the different LODs or anything like that. So I would just say it's different workflows, But inside of Bridge, you're going to be given so much more flexibility to do exactly what it is that you want to do with the content.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if there's nothing else here, I guess we could start bringing some content directly into the engine. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think what we'll start with here is if I just go, I'm just inside a Bridge here. I can see these are or I guess I can go to local. This is just everything that I currently have downloaded, right? So these are the assets that are currently living on my drive. And for the purposes of this demo, I won't go through and download the plugin for you guys and everything like that. We have a lot of tutorials that sort of show, but it's really easy to do. So I have an Unreal Engine scene here loaded up already. So you guys might be familiar with this. This is a scene that we actually used for our virtual production shoot for SIGGRAPH of last year. And so I can just kind of fly around the scene so you guys can see it. It's using a lot of our Iceland assets. So we actually basically took one of the scenes from Rebirth, if you guys have seen Rebirth, the short that we did. And what we did is we actually just wanted to create a virtual production example that we could put, an actual physical actor in. And there's a lot of content about that on the YouTube channel as well. So what we're going to do with this scene specifically is that I think that it looks pretty good, but I think we should bring in a new asset to this scene so that I can post it to my ArtStation and get lots of likes here. So what I'll do here inside of Bridge, I won't download anything here for you guys to either. I'll just pull something I have locally on my drive. So as you can see, I've got a wide variety of different content types here. I've got these Icelandic jagged lava outcrops. I've got different fabric pieces and everything like that, cucumbers. And what's cool is I can actually go in here and I can inspect all these different assets before I even go and actually put it into the engine, right? So I can click on any one of these guys and just be able to very quickly start to inspect them and actually see exactly whether or not I think they would be good for the purposes of what it is that I'm making in my scene. So I think what this scene really needs is this ham, though. I think that this is obviously the thing that will bring this environment to the finish line.
Obviously.
So I already have it downloaded, so I won't go through that process for you guys, but the only thing I'm going to be doing here is actually selecting the resolution that I want. So I've already downloaded 2K. I'm going to be using JPEGs here. And I have my LOD set up here. So LOD 0 is going to be the main one that I bring in. And then from there, the only thing I need to do, so before I even do that, like I mentioned, this is where you can go and you can customize the experience, right? So if I want to channel pack, if I want to change the names of these assets as they're going out, I can do all that here. So it's important to note you can do all of that work inside of Bridge before you actually export. But let's go ahead and export this guy directly into my scene. So I have got my ham ready and I click export. And what you'll see at the top is it's exporting to Unreal Engine. I'll tab back into my scene here in Unreal and it's importing everything. It's setting up the shaders, the LOD chains, everything is good to go. And boom, we have our ham in the scene and we can scale it up if we want to, just exactly what we're looking for here. And I think that now this scene is basically done. So if I go in here to this asset, as you can see here, I can inspect my ham and flip the light around to get a different view of it if I want. I can actually view the LODs here as well. So this ties back to the point that we were making about making it so that you can really keep performance top of mind, like while you're working, right? So I can keep LOD 2 maybe as the render mesh, or I can even get more aggressive with it. All of our assets actually LOD through LOD 5, but some of them actually extend past that LOD 5 chain. So it really just comes down to exactly what it is that you guys want to be working with. So another really important point here is that it makes a material instance for you. So we actually ship with a material instance. So it's entirely, or a master material rather. And so we actually ship with a very simple master material, and I'll show that to you guys now, just so you guys can see it. So inside of here, this is our basic master material setup. So it has displacement and everything. You can actually use a more simplified version of this as well that doesn't have displacement if you want as well. But this is really a starting place for you. If you're not familiar with how to build materials and you're not well versed in all the control that you can have inside the material editor, this gives you a starting place, right? So if I want, right, I can go in here and I can do something really, really simple. Let's say that from here, I like everything that's going on here, but I want the control to be able to desaturate the asset here. So I can go ahead and pipe in everything from my albedo channel, and I can go in here and set this as a parameter, and we'll call this desaturation. And then I can just pipe this back in. So we'll set the default value to 0, but I can actually just pipe this guy back into base color. And that's a really simple modification I can make to this shader, right? Without doing anything too wild. And then from there, after this saves out, then I can go back into my material instance for the ham. And as you can see here at the bottom, I've got my desaturation slider now. I can go in and live inside the editor start to desaturate the ham to get it exactly where I think it fits in this Icelandic setting. So that's a really simple overview of how to bring content in. Guys, is there anything else you want to add to this?
Well, that's the starting with a master material like that is huge. I think so many people kind of struggle with creating their first master materials, and there's some that ship with the engine with starter content and stuff, but having such a robust master material that's well written and easy to extend is really fantastic. And also, when I've experienced bringing more content in, it uses that master material, and you end up with a really fairly organized library. And it's a good learning point on how master materials and instances should be used, and how some of the more advanced features work in there. So I think it's a great starting point, and it's also a great learning resource too for those that like to kind of pick apart things. I'm pretty picky about my master materials because I've made a lot of them, and
you deserve to be.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and one thing that's neat about this too is that, like I said, you can use our master material here, or if you want, you can actually use your own. So if I go to the plugin here, you can see at the top of the UI, what I can do is I can actually override which material I'm using for bringing content in. The only thing to note is that you have to make sure that you delineate, the albedo going in, normal going in, roughness, wherever. So as long as you're making those customization options inside of your master material, then the same principle will apply, right? If I go and I want to download a ham and a cucumber and a squash and bring all of them in at the same time, I can actually set the master material for the 3D asset pipeline here to go and directly and make my master or my material instance from the exact master material that I'm working in. So it's fully customizable in that regard.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Somebody else also mentioned, which is something that I like, is how cleanly organized the content comes into the engine. You get nice folders, and the content is easy to look at, especially as projects get bigger. It's nice to see that the content that's coming in from Megascans and from Mixer and is well organized, and that you can see the meshes that come in, and you can see the textures and all the materials, and even the material instances are. You don't have to go hunting and pecking for it, especially if you're mixing things together from various different content packs.
Absolutely. So I think that's all we want to really show here for Bridge. So I guess we could jump into Mixer unless there's anything else here that you guys would like to see.
So I think the question came up, and this is a really great demo, but there's I guess some confusion, like, because you can get assets from the marketplace, you can get them, you can download them and then import them, but there was a question and several questions about, like, I've got way too much stuff on my drive. So really the workflow we encourage is like what Galen showed, is to use Bridge to manage your content. The marketplace packs are really good if you're just curious and you don't want to kind of learn a new workflow and you just want to see what these assets look like. but long term, those take up a lot of space. And the bridge is the newest stuff. And then using the Megascans plugin and this workflow into Unreal is really the best way. You can do it, manually in Bridge. You can download and then import. And I've even seen some YouTube tutorials showing that, unfortunately. But really, this is the best way to do it. Everything comes in really nicely and with almost no effort on your part.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to mention too is that what's really cool about the library and the way that different students especially are using the library is that it's definitely not just limited to environment artists, right? We have character artists that are using the content. We have concept artists that are making some amazing stuff. It's really cool to see that, right? Where maybe they have just an intro level understanding of the engine, or maybe they're more familiar rendering in Max and everything like that, but they can bring content in and just start to paint over it, which I think is just really, really cool. And obviously Unreal Engine makes it super easy to start that process of really going in very quickly and prototyping something, moving the light around, painting over it, riffing on an idea, and then seeing if that works with your development team. So yeah. All right. Well, why don't we jump into Mixer and we'll go over some of the other things you can do with the library here. So I'll just flip over here real quick and I'll actually close the engine. So let's see. All right. So Quixel Mixer here. So this is, again, I just want to make sure I say it a couple times on this stream that everything you're going to see today, guys, is something you can use for free. You can download all the stuff that we're showing today. I'm not showing any features of advanced builds or anything like that. Like, this is literally stuff that you can go and download today. So,
Galen, there's some questions about the points. There are some questions about the points. People are still seeing points that sort of come up. Are the points still relevant?
Points are not really relevant, actually. So it's kind of a legacy system. That's how we originally were kind of divvying out quotas for teams. But it's kind of a legacy system for Unreal Engine users, as they just have complete and total access to the library.
And there's another question on there about whether people can actually make games or make content with these assets, and whether they have to pay for them at that point or whether they're still free.
Yeah, so I guess it comes down to the license type that you have, I guess. So I'm not super familiar with the delineation between EULA users and actual licensees, I guess. So I guess it's important just to say that, like, you have to adhere to Unreal Engine EULAs. That's really where, I'm not really on the licensing side, so I want to make that super clear. But yeah, follow the Unreal Engine EULAs, and that's the best way to understand the systems. Cool. Well, yeah. So let's jump in here on this demo here. So I wanted to show you guys Quixel Mixer. So this is a relatively new tool for us, like within the last couple of years, and we've made some pretty massive strides with it. It was originally called Megascan Studio. I don't know if anyone in the audience remembers the original release of this, but so that original release was just being able to mix surfaces together. And so now we've made some pretty amazing strides in being able to actually leverage the entire Megascans library to manipulate assets in 3D, bring in your own content as well and texture it there. But it's a pretty amazing program. So I wanted to give you guys sort of a quick demo and just kind of generally kind of show off the UI and the way that it generally works. So we did a live stream, I think it was last week, about smart materials. And I'm going to go over that same principle because I think it's really important for educators and students to understand. The reason for that being that smart material workflows allow you to easily repeat tasks and make the work a lot easier for texturing a wide variety of assets across maybe an entire grouping of materials. And so I'm going to go over that workflow today. And again, this is one of those things that's just such an industry standard element of working in 3D. And so it's just one of the things that I felt this was the thing I wanted to highlight for this stream today. So I guess we can start with the UI here. So as you can see here at the top, you can browse your local library. So this is, again, everything that I have downloaded on my drive, right? So there's our wonderful ham here on the side. We have a wide variety of different things that I've downloaded specifically here. We have a couple smart materials that I've made and everything. But the experience of browsing Mixer is very similar to that of Bridge. So I'm in a different program, but but it looks very similar, right? So we want to keep it about the same as far as like how users are actually engaged with this tool. So you can very quickly go and you can browse everything that's new in the library, right? So I'm seeing here everything that's latest in the Surface tab, or I can change it maybe to 3D. I can see these are the latest 3D assets, right? So here's our starfish that we were looking at. Looks like we have some really cool like stones from a Thai beach, which is amazing. All kinds of cool stuff here. So the browsing experience is very similar, right? So I can go in here, and in the same way I can start to search, right? I can see what do we have in the concrete, and just searching concrete, or what do we have in, I don't know, let's say mud, right? I can look and I can see everything that has mud associated with it. And we're going through and we're tagging these assets meticulously here so that we can go through and start to actually browse and search in that same way. Another really cool one that I always like to show here actually is animal. And we have all these really gross scans of chicken skins and furs and all types of really kind of weird stuff actually. And these are the types of scans that I think play really well for making some really kind of gross alien content or something like that. So it's a really cool way to sort of browse here, is just being able to quickly search here at the top of the UI and find exactly what it is that you're looking for. So we also have atlases like we were talking about. So atlases, they can be either like these types of decal type assets is maybe another way that people might say it. So decals here, these atlases are more traditional atlases of, different types of vegetation that we've laid out that people can go and create their own vegetation if they want. But we also have a couple different really cool things here. Let me see if I can find one. We've uploaded so many recently that it's hard to find, but yeah, so stuff like this, right? So we have like these road debris type assets, right? So these are tileable decals that we can layer onto surfaces and actually either break up tiling on a specific surface, or we can just use them just to sort of pepper the surface if we want to. But today, I want to show some 3D stuff. So let's actually go in and bring in a 3D asset. And I'm actually going to be using one of the Megascans library assets, but you can, like I said, you can bring in your own asset if you want to here as well. But I'll just load up this guy, this Japanese pillar. I think this is a really cool one to start with. And what I want to do with this guy is obviously the scanned material, the scanned content that we've got here is already really pretty good. But I think that we can take this a step further, maybe make it our own, have it fit inside the world, and maybe take a couple of cues of maybe what your art director or your instructor is telling you to do with this specific asset type. So let's go ahead and start texturing this guy. What I'll do to start here is at the top of the UI, you can see add surface layer, and I'll do that now. So I know already that I want just a simple concrete material here, and I'll just bring this in. So what this does is that I can go in now and I can actually start to mess around with this, and I can layer this material on in any way that I want. So we've added hexaplanar projection into Mixer, which allows you to have a completely seamless experience here. So if I isolate just the albedo here, you can see across all of our smoothing groups, you will not find tiling on this guy. So we're able to project tiling materials across the surface in a way that we really weren't able to do before. And so I have a couple different controls with this here as well, as you can see. So in my placement tab here on the side, I can switch it to either tiling or freeform, but I'm going to stick with hexaplanar projection right now because I like just this box projection. I can actually move the scan around here as well, so it swims across the surface. Maybe gives me a different area of the scan that I want to feature. I can also change the scale here, right? So, and again, this is always tiling. So I'm changing the scale here, maybe manipulating it slightly to where I get it exactly where I want. And then I can rotate this around and find just something completely new. So We also have our height frequency channels here on the side. So I'll zoom in on this so you can kind of get the point. So if I up my high frequency values, what this is going to do is actually bump the tiny little bumps that you might get on this surface, right? And from there, I can also bump the low frequency here as well. So maybe some of the lower register pieces. So the bigger divots and bumps and that type of thing. I think this concrete scan looks good by itself. So I'm just going to keep everything at 1 for now. But let's go ahead and start to make some modifications to this to, again, make it our own, right? So if I go over here to the side, I can see that I have all my different channels that actually make up this asset. So if I go into albedo, right, I can see that I have a couple of different controls here, and I have not only just a slider being able to pick the color. So if I go here on the side, I can go in here and start to change the color of the albedo if I want to. So I'll do that now, actually. I'll go ahead and just desaturate this guy slightly. And also we have this awesome little tool to be able to go use an eyedropper and select a value if I want inside the viewport. So it's up to you with how you'd like to work here, but there's a bunch of different ways to actually interface here with the scans. So I think that I think that's a decent value here. Maybe bring it more into sort of a warm tone slightly. And there we go. I think I'll keep it there. So on the albedo tab here as well, you'll notice I have blending modes. So if I start to layer on individual maps, right? So if I say, all right, so I want this albedo to multiply maybe on top of what it was that we had below, I can do that here. It doesn't really look that great here with this specific value that I've chosen, but I can do that, right? I can overlay it if I want to. So now we get a mix of both of those. So just to show it, I'll toggle the albedo here. And so now we've got something just completely different here. And I can up the contrast on this too, if I want, just a really simple slider to maybe up the contrast here slightly. And then obviously we have our opacity slider here too. So I can feather the effect of just on an individual channel basis. I can go in and start to make some nice modifications here. So I'll keep things back up to normal because we want to basically completely retexture this guy. And what I think would look really good with this is a couple things, right? I think I want to maybe highlight the edges slightly. I want to maybe put some moss that's maybe built up in the corners and the crevices of this guy a little bit. And then I also want maybe moss to actually creep up from the bottom as well. And then maybe just for fun at the end, we'll add in some nice like streaks of maybe some rain or some just general liquid that's accumulated on the surface. So what I'll do here now is actually just duplicate this layer to actually do that edge highlight feature that I was talking about. So I can right click on this guy, and since I've duplicated it, I hit Control-D to duplicate it, by the way. If I right click on it, I can add in a mask stack. So what this will do is it gives me the ability to start to mask out the materials that I'm working with here. So just to really illustrate this point a little bit further, I'll bump the albedo here slightly so that we get just a little bit more of a high frequency or higher value here. And then what I'll do is I'll actually add in a curvature to this guy. And if I hit 9 on my keyboard, then what I can see is that this is actually masking out this asset. And I can see exactly how the mask is operating. So if I hit 1 back on the keyboard, I'll go back and I can see exactly how this is working. So if I manipulate this curvature live here in the viewport, you can see exactly how I'm getting that edge highlight. And you can see it's just building up slightly on this edge, right? You can toggle it on and off so you can actually see that. So I think that's a really nice way of kind of working here. And again, what I can do is if I don't want the exact same material to be projected exactly like that, I can actually change this guy, maybe change the way it's projected on the surface, just on those edges, maybe affect the scale of it too. So maybe I get some bigger divots that come out on the edges. But this is ultimately kind of gives me a little bit of a different look than what we had before. So it's just bumping those highlights a little bit, which I think is kind of nice. So the next thing I want to do is I'll do the same type of noise that we were working with before, or a different type of noise rather. And why don't we bring in, I think I like this smooth concrete guy. So we'll bring this on the surface here, and I'll just sort of change the scale to where I get it to work exactly how I think I want this to work. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to break up the surface below it. So what I can do is if I, again, right click on this guy and create a mask stack, And I can go in, I can actually put a tiling noise on it. So if I go to Perlin noise and I hit 9 on my keyboard, you can see what this Perlin noise looks like. And I can go in here and maybe change the amplitude of it, affect the frequency of this, and just get a completely different effect from what I was working with before. I can actually go in here and change the octaves of this as well if I want some maybe finer detail. I can do a lot of different things with this. But one of the things that I want to do here to start for sure is I actually want to add a projection modifier so that we get rid of those seams. So I can link it just to that layer below. And what I'll do here now is just be able to go in and start to actually affect this to where we're getting that scale to just completely do away with all the seams that we were working with before. And so I can go in and start to add in some frequency here, seed the values, maybe get something else. And if I just look at this now on my surface, you can see exactly how this is affecting it. So we're getting the layers below it to still come through, which is really kind of a nice effect here. But maybe I'll change just the albedo slightly to where we're getting maybe a little bit, we can go a little bit darker or we can go a little bit lighter. So get something that just breaks up the surface a little bit more than how we had it. So as you can see here, I'll just toggle this on and off now. It's just breaking up that surface a little bit more. It's not something that we want to completely stomp out the work that we've done below. In fact, I'll actually bring this edge highlight back up so that we continue to get that edge highlight from the areas that we're looking at below. Guys, any questions on anything I've covered here so far? No? Okay, cool. Well, I'll keep rolling then. So I guess the next thing I want to do is, like we were talking about, is add in the moss. So I'll add in another surface here and we'll type in moss. And I like this mossy grounds right here. And I want this now to actually go into the crevices, right? So we've highlighted the edges. We've broken up the surface slightly with another material here. But now we want to go in and actually put some nice moss, like just in some of those crevices. So I can go ahead and scale this down to actually get it right into the range that I want it to, per the scale of this asset, right? And again, I can go and start to mess with the projection, maybe bring it more into a range that I want it to. But again, we'll just add in another mask here. And we'll do curvature again. But the important thing this time is that we're actually gonna make it a little bit different. So if I hit 9 on my keyboard, this will preview my mask like we talked about. But I'll actually invert it this time because we want to actually get the crevices instead of bumping the edges. So if I go here and I affect my levels here slightly, you can see that now I'm getting something that's just completely different, where I'm actually getting this these crevices actually to highlight a little bit more. I can turn on anti-aliasing as well, so I can despeckle that. And if I go back just into my regular viewport here, I can see that now I'm getting this nice moss just in those crevices, which is super nice. Another way you can work here too is I can actually go in here and I can change my default curvature to maybe say cavities only, right? And I'll just move these levels back to where we actually get it exactly where we want it. But so from default curvature back in now to, so we're gonna do default curvature back into cavities only. And then now, as you can see, we're getting it this way, or we can switch
We lose
to edges only. You really start to actually customize it even more. Oh, are you guys still there?
We're still here.
We're still here.
Okay.
You had a little pause there.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But we seem to all be back in real time again.
Okay,
You're good.
Cool. Sweet. Well, I'll just keep rolling here then. So this is that moss. So we brought it in and we just got it sort of lightly affecting, the edges here. And I can feather this effect live here inside the viewport, which is really cool. So we're doing live curvature here, which is just an amazing way to go in and start to texture. So what's also cool about this is, let's say that I want to maybe from this go in and start to actually paint out now, instead of just relying on curvature. I can go in, maybe pick a brush, and then from here, I can go in and make it so that I'm painting out maybe this effect in areas where I don't want it. So I can go in with a brush, And I can actually really start to customize this, maybe get exactly what it is that I'm going for. So it's just fully customizable in that regard and totally non-destructive as well. So let's do one more thing here. I'm going to add in moss again, but like I said, I want it to actually come up from below. So I'll go in and delete. So all I did here was actually just duplicate that moss because we want that moss again. And I'm going to delete those masks, but bring in a new mask. And this is actually going to be position gradient. So if I go over here and just hit position gradient, now what this is going to do, if I hit 9 on the keyboard just to see that, is I can see the way this mask is actually working. So it's masking from top down, which is kind of neat, but we actually want to go from the opposite way. So I'll invert it here and then just drag in my range so that I'm getting just a really nice moss buildup just from below, which is just really just a nice effect here on the surface. And if I want to take this a step further, right? Because right now, what I have is just, it's a nice effect, but this isn't really how moss would grow, right? It would kind of have a little bit of unevenness on the surface. So what's cool about the mask stack is you can layer these different effects on top of each other. So the best way to sort of think about it is it's like a mix between the stack inside of 3D Studio Max and layer effects inside of Photoshop. And it's kind of just a really nice hybrid of those two ideas together. So I'll do something like that right now. So we have position gradient right now as the main driving mask here, but let's go in and actually add in some noise. So if I hit 9 on the keyboard again, you can see this is what that noise on top of it is doing. But if I set now this noise to maybe say overlay, right? So now we're getting this to overlay on top of the surface and it breaks up that edge even more. It makes it even more natural, right? So I can go and maybe bump the amplitude of this guy, maybe affect the frequency of it. And then I can see the value, maybe get something different, but I can go in here and really customize this to where we're getting something just completely different from what we had before. And now we have just a way better transition here. So that's a really nice way of sort of working with the mask stack. And if I just alt click on this guy real quick, on this, I can see the original and then see mine. And this is just a really simple way of maybe modifying the tools like we were talking about, going back to sort of the cheating question, right? Of like, all right, so now like I've made a bunch of modifications to this guy that make it sort of my own, and we have something completely new to work with. And just to show the smart material aspect of what it is that I wanted to demo today, all of the things that we've drawn so far with this really simple stack here are now elements that we can bring into a completely separate mesh. So what I'll do is I'll show that now. So I'll load in, we'll load in this guy. This is a really cool statue piece. And I'm just gonna load it into the same project. And what will happen is that all the same rules of what we just did now apply to just a completely new asset. So we've got that nice buildup of moss going from the bottom. We're getting some nice edge highlight features here. We're getting moss to actually go in and break up some of the surfaces here. It's just a really, really simple way of retexturing maybe an entire slew of assets, right? So I'll do it again, right? I'll bring in this Japanese railing, right? So these three assets all live in that same world. Why not retexture them and have it follow all the same rules of what I did for just one of them, right? So being able to repeat this type of work across a wide range of assets, I think is just incredibly powerful. Any questions so far, guys?
Amazing.
I think their minds are blown.
Amazing.
Cool. That's awesome.
Maybe that's just me projecting since my mind is blown.
Yeah, there was one question about the brushes. Can you make custom brushes in there that you can use for painting out mats and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that was one thing that I wanted to show here. So you can bring in your own brushes actually, or we have a huge amount of brushes inside the library here as well. So if I go to my online tab here and I just filter out for brush, these are all the brushes that you can go and download. So we've got a bunch of them here. I've actually got a couple downloaded already that I think would be pretty cool here. So why don't we pull real quick, pull this guy. So let's download this one real quick. And then if I go back into my viewport here, I've got this brush now, and I can actually scale this brush up. And what I'll do is maybe just have like a small amount of liquid that is maybe come down from the surface here. So I'll just be painting on the roughness channel here, and we'll turn off all these other pieces, but we'll make our color really dark like this, so that it actually looks like water is dripping down. If I just paint there, then as you can see on the surface now, we've got maybe a little bit of water that's trickling down the surface. So it's really fun. It's a really nice way of engaging with the library here. So again, I can just paint over here. It's not really how water would accumulate on the surface, but but there we go. But yeah, to load in your custom brush, you just load it in here, right? You just load it, boom, and that's it.
Can you also go over some of your hotkeys and that you've been using, to manipulate the lights and the layers in the scene?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so if I hold Shift and I right click, and I hold down right click, right? I just move the light around this way. And we have a bunch of different lights you can actually circle through here as well. So if I tab through the up and down keys, then I can go here and I can just see all the different lights that we have. So you can do that. It's a really nice way of working. Let's see here. Some of the other hotkeys that I use. Let's see. I know they're like so second nature to me now. It's like one of those things that that's hard to see. So Control D was one that I used here to actually duplicate this asset here. So just the moss. So I just did a duplicate of that. So Control D, that will just duplicate that exact piece you have highlighted. Even if it has these other attributes associated with it, then you can bring all those features over. Let's see, another one that I used, I think in this example was, oh yeah, with this one here. So I brought in a noise, and then I used a projection modifier on top. If you alt click on anything in the stack, that will actually just link it directly to the piece below it. So just here's another example of that, right? So what I can do is maybe let's add in a brightness and contrast node here. And so I only want that brightness and contrast to affect just that noise. So I can go in and actually add in some contrast here now, maybe change the brightness of it. And now that is constricted just to that. And I can alt click it at any time and basically change it so that it's no longer adhering to that specific rule set. So that's another hotkey. Let's see. Oh yeah, and I was tabbing through all the different channels here. So if I hit 1, this is my main viewport. So this is with everything attached to it. So full PBR, everything working here. And then I can hit 2 on the keyboard. That will go to albedo. 3 is metalness. 4 is roughness. Normal, displacement, occlusion, material ID. Layer mask is 9. So that's a hotkey that I use pretty frequently, is just tabbing through all the different inputs in case I want to maybe isolate one of them, just to view it that way. I think that's most of the hotkeys that I hit, actually. Those are the standard ones, at least. Any other questions, guys?
Looks like the questions are mostly about kind of the workflow from here now into Unreal and how that works.
There's another question here about the texture formats.
Yeah, so you can do a bunch of different things to answer sort of both of those questions side by side. So you can, if you want, you can do the same thing that we were looking at inside of Bridge, which is actually channel pack these guys. So if I go to my export tab here on the side, I can change, all right, so I want it to either be JPEG, Target, PNG, TIFF, EXR. So I can change all that here. I can change my export resolution. And I can go in on a per channel basis now and actually change exactly what it is that I want to be exported out of Mixer. So it's fully customizable in this regard, right? So I can change it to specific PNG. I can have it be 8-bit or 16-bit, depending on what I want. And so it's fully customizable here to be able to export that way. So that's one way you can do it. You can also, I can add this to a library. So if I'm actually, so I'll load up like, I'll open the surface just to sort of show this real quick. So I'll load up one of our sample mixes here just to show. Why don't we do, yeah, we'll load up this guy here. So this is our damage painted concrete mix. So we make it so that Bridge is basically a central hub for all these pieces, right? So if I want, I can go from here with this specific surface mix, and I can say file, export to library, and then this will actually send it directly into Bridge. So I can say, all right, I want to make this, the concrete is the category that I want. I don't need metalness. I want roughness, AO, specular. And from there, I just click export. And then what this will do is actually just bring it directly into Bridge to where I can actually export it to maybe Unreal Engine, or like we did with the ham, or you can export into any other application therein. So if I just go here now into Mixer, now I have this damage painted concrete that we were just looking at inside of Mixer. And that basically just uses Bridge as like a central repository of a place where you can send assets directly out. Anything else you guys would like to see or have me answer?
Mind's blown.
Well, that's good. That makes it easy.
And question, can you use your own custom meshes? I would assume the answer is yes.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to show as an example here, so we just did a tutorial covering a lot of the new Mixer functionality here in this video here. So this is using the custom asset workflow. So they go through and actually texture this spaceship. And so this is a really cool example of bringing it in. It actually shows how you get to a final result of like a custom asset here using material IDs and everything like that. So they cover the entire workflow in this video. So I would encourage anyone that's looking to do that to go and check this one out specifically.
We have another question here about trees. Will it be possible to do full trees?
Yeah, so I can actually show a small portion of that. So this is in our webinar that we just rolled out a couple weeks ago. So trees are something that everyone's been asking for a very, very, very long time. And so we've definitely listened to the community in that regard. And so we're actually building a solution for full tree pipelines that's going to be specifically for Unreal Engine users. Well, it's going to be, I'd say, best for Unreal Engine users. But this is an example of like some of those tools sort of in action. So this is running in Unreal Engine here. And it just shows the complexity of the trees that we're looking to create. So I was actually on this scan trip where we got this initial batch of trees, and I can tell you that definitively these are some of the most intricate types of scans that we've ever done. Breaking these things down to every possible characteristic that you would need in order to make photorealistic trees. So, and that's the key to this, right? Is that we're not looking just to create procedural trees. We're looking to create absolutely photorealistic trees. Absolutely. So.
And we had an earlier question about actually your field trips and how this happens these days, particularly at the moment with current situation, and also with getting permission to actually scan a lot of these places.
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, we have scan teams all over the world. I mean, just they're everywhere. And so yeah, it's a weird time, obviously, right now. I think it's a little bit more challenging to travel, obviously. But the good news is that every scanner, every person on our scan team, right, has access to so many things just in their backyard even, right? I think that one of the things that we found is that while people have a wide variety of different asks for the library, right, they might be looking for maybe something exotic, like an exotic plant or something in a remote part of the world. It turns out that most of the time, artists are really looking for like junk piles and, things they can just like put in corners, and like things they can put on tables and, just random stuff like that, which is all stuff that our guys have access to even, without being able to travel. So, yeah, so right now, I mean, we still have a steady stream of content that's hitting the library. It hasn't hindered our pace at all. But obviously we had some scan trips that were planned that we would have loved to have gone on that we're just having to postpone a little bit. but those guys have the coolest job, right? Being able to just travel all around the world to get some of the coolest content, shoot it, and help bring it to life in the library.
Absolutely amazing. Galen, absolutely thank you for participating with us today and joining us for today's live stream. I think the education community is super appreciative of all the information you shared. Hopefully we were able to answer some of the questions that were helpful for those of you who are teaching with Unreal Engine. We have one last amazing surprise for you all today. We're going to be premiering the 2020 Student Showcase today as we wrap up our live stream. But before we do, we want to make sure that you will all be joining us for next Friday's live stream as well. So it was really a privilege and a pleasure to welcome Galen today and to be able to do a live stream on the Quixel ecosystem and to be able to sort of focus on how it applies to the education community. Next week, we're going to be doing something similar with Twinmotion, because even though we do live streams and we do webinars and talk about the suite of tools that are offered by Epic and Unreal Engine a fair amount through our community, this is kind of a unique privilege to really talk about how it applies to those people that are teaching these tools in an academic setting, or maybe teaching them on YouTube, or maybe teaching them inside of a studio. So this is a kind of something that's special for us, so that we can make sure we address a large community, because it's a massive community of people that are teaching these things in schools, have questions about it, and our opportunity to be able to really address those questions and to focus on this community is a privilege of ours. So
absolutely.
Once again, thank you, Galen. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tom, today. And we are nearly approaching and rapidly approaching the end of our time today. Galen, is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean, I just really appreciate you guys having me on. And if there are any educators out there that would like to speak further about how to better integrate the Megascans ecosystem into specifically what they're teaching, we'd love to speak with you guys, because that's definitely what we'd love to do.
Yeah, now I'm scrolling on the bottom of the screen here how you can get a hold of us. You can always reach out to us at ueacademia@epicgames.com. So if you hit us up on this email, and even if you want to reach out and have additional questions for Galen, we'll make sure that we get those questions to him and he finds a way to respond. And if there are no more immediate questions for Galen, there's one question about docs related to the Quixel suite, the Quixel ecosystem. Again, did you want to just talk a little bit about the documentation before we roll the 2020 showcase for students?
Sure. Yeah. So if you just go here inside Bridge, I'm still sharing, right? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So if you just go up to the Help tab at the top and you go to User Manual, we have a huge amount of documentation for all of this. And this is really a great way to really just a solid way to maybe come to better understand the tools if you want to get super granular with it. But this is just written stuff, obviously, written cues here. But we definitely would encourage you guys to also look at the YouTube channel, like we said, because we spend a lot of time making those tutorials and make sure that they're just like really well manicured and exactly what the development community needs. So, but yeah, this is the Google Doc here inside of the application that you can pull up at any time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
For sure.
All right. Well, without further ado, I would like to share with you all the premiere of the 2020 Student Showcase. This is the first time this will be seen. After today's stream, this will be available on YouTube and you'll be able to watch it again. So thanks again, guys. After the reel, we will be signing off. Thank you again for coming. And here we go.
Bye. Stay safe, everyone.